Once upon a lifetime, you will come across a certain list of books that you should read. I've always seen those lists around, and I've always thought, well, shucks, this doesn't feel right. And what I mean is that everyone has different tastes and different genres they like and different style of writing that they like and they enjoy. So it's only fair that everyone's lists is gonna be different. And these are mine. This is my list, and I wanted to share it with you. Now, you might not agree to this list, but like I said, I think everyone has different tastes and different genres, and it's not fair to just make a list and say that everyone should read these books. So these are just mine, and I'm going to not only share some of the books that I think everyone should read, but also why. But before we start, we just hit 800 subscribers. Just a lot of people. I mean, it's like a small number in comparison. I know that, and it's pathetic to celebrate every 100. But honestly, I celebrate every one. Like every time I get a notification that someone subscribes to my channel, I like get so happy and I take screenshots. Like literally, like I have so many freaking screenshots of my. Thank you. I love you. Hi. Starting off with Everything I Never Told You. I only read this book this year, and I've read almost all of these this year. So I'm like still impressed by them. So this is all going to change next year, of course. So Everything I Never Told You is set in the 1970s and is following two generations of one mixed racial family or biracial family where the father is Chinese and the mom is white. Why I think everyone should read this is because the stigma around that is done so freaking beautifully in this. When I tell you, I loved it. It was important. It was important. Like whenever I finished it, all I wanted is like to recommend it to everyone. So here I am recommending it. I found it so freaking interesting because we follow a lot of POVs from the third person POV, but a lot of POVs, and we follow their father, their mom, and their kids. But because their father is Chinese, he never ever felt included. He never felt part of the world around him because they moved when he was younger. Bullying and racism is the only things that surrounded him and the only things that he knew. And he actually got super attracted to their mom, to his wife, and that was the first thought that he had when he saw her, that she could blend in, blonde hair, blue eyes, like everyone around her. She could easily blend in, and that's exactly what he wanted. So that what attracted him to her. And her, the opposite, were special and not easy to blend in with everyone around him, and that's what she wanted to be. So that's what attracted her to him. That was super freaking interesting and so well done. Everything that makes us is us, and we gotta learn to appreciate it. And that was done beautifully, and I love that a lot. And something else that I loved and is an important part of this book is that their mom is sort of has a household when she was younger with her own mother, had a household like a 1950s type of household where, you know, your job is in the kitchen and to make your husband happy. That type of thing. And all she wanted was to be a doctor, a scientist. All she wanted was to be a doctor. That's all. That was her dream. And she made a vow to never ever let her daughter be imprisoned like that, to always make sure that her daughter is free, until we figure out that her daughter wanted to complete opposite thing. They discovered all of that way too late because their daughter turns up dead. This is not a spoiler. It's literally the back of the book says Lydia is dead, but they don't know this yet. So begins the exquisite novel about a Chinese-American family living in 1970s small-town Ohio. Lydia is the favorite child of Marilyn and James Lee, and her parents are determined that she will fulfill the dreams they were unable to pursue. But when Lydia's body is found in the local lake, the delicate balancing act that has been keeping the Lee family together is destroyed. So everything comes to the open, everything becomes public. All the secrets that held on, that kept this family glued, they all come about. Their father struggled with racism, their father struggled with missing home and with the familiarity of home. their mother struggled to not repeat her own childhood and their daughter's pressures, what led to her demise. I think this is such an important book to learn about families and importance of communication and talking. Next up is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I can't tell you how understood I felt when I read that book. The reason why I think a lot of people, everyone should read this book is honestly because mental health is so stigmatized. Like, there's so much stigma around mental health and it's not even understood, and I want people to read this book so they would understand. It is from the POV of someone that is mentally unstable. The author herself is mentally unstable. She took her own life, sadly, and all I wanted is to push this book to people. Like, read it, please try to understand me. You know what I mean? I think it's time. 2022, damn near 2023, it's time to move past the mental health stigma thing. It's time. Let's move on. Let's understand stuff, you know? I'll keep recommending this to everyone so they would understand mental illness. Way internal struggles were explained, and the way the author herself tried to be understood so freaking desperately, and the way she felt lost and how she translated that feeling of being lost into words is something that honestly I will never be able to understand, because let me tell you, when you are mentally unstable, it is the most difficult thing to try to put what you are feeling into words. And yeah, I think it's one hell of an important book. Next up is The Hobbit. Do I even have to explain this one? The reason why is so freaking simple and easy, nothing too complicated. The reason why I think everyone should read this is honestly because I think everyone should at least once in their life see the basis of fantasy. And this is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the basis of fantasy right here. It is beautiful. Not only that, but it is beautiful. This is like a rite of passage. You know what I mean? This is like a rite of passage for everyone. And not only is the writing beautiful and the story fun, entertaining, and beautifully written, and this is iconic right here, okay? This is freaking iconic. Not only that, but this is literally the basis of fantasy. So many great stories, movies, characters, worlds, world building, words, songs, so many fairy tales, so many things have come out because of this book. When I read it, I saw so many similarities to Neil Gaiman, to J.K. Rowling, so many names that I saw in the Harry Potter franchise, so many names that I saw in so many movies and so many stories, so many references that all were created in The Hobbit or in some sort of work by Tolkien. So I think this is like, especially if you're interested in fantasy and you have not read this, please do. This is literally fantasy, like the basis of fantasy. Next up, we have The Ocean at the End of the Lane. GAIMAN. Now this is a recent read for me because it was recommended by Daniel, and he's a stranger. I don't know him, he doesn't know me. I basically just asked a stranger and he said to read these, and I did, and I fell hard in love. And why I think everyone should read this, apart from Neil Gaiman being a fucking literary god, yeah, I said it, because the story itself is important. If you, like I, were a former child and had stuff happen, then you are traumatized. And you sort of gaslighted yourself into believing that those things did not happen and something else happened instead of those things. This is the book for you, my friend. So this all starts with someone who goes back to his hometown for a funeral and goes to the end of the lane where there is a lake, a pond, where his neighbor and former childhood friend convinced him that it was an ocean and that she was immortal and her family was immortal, and there is these creatures all over and witches and ghouls and whatever and gulags and shit. Around the middle of this book, I started sniffing some childhood PTSD. Around the time where he was like, the creature, the witch, is kissing my father, I was like, uh-oh. I know what's going on here, and it's lovely. It's all about how we as children, our brains are so freaking delicate and trying so freaking hard to protect us, so we would make up literally the fucking craziest scenarios just so we would remain sane and not be traumatized. And you can read it at first glance and it's gonna be an amazing fantasy fiction story. Take a shot every time I say fantasy this fucking video. You're gonna die. Drink responsibly. I don't want to kill you. I love you. But then if, again, you're like I, traumatized, then you're gonna see the inner layer. This is an onion. Like, it has a lot of layers, okay? God, I love Shrek. This is an onion. And if you see past those layers, then you're gonna understand what I'm explaining. You're gonna understand what I understood. And if I'm the only one that understood that, then The next book is also a recent read. It's actually literally the last video from this one. And that is 1,000 Splendid Suns. If you want a more in-depth, then go watch the video. Thank you, I love you. Now, if you are like I and you live under a freaking rock, then you've never read this book before. And if you're not, then congratulations on being good. This book follows two generations from the 1960s until 2003. And it is following Miriam, who is an Afghan woman, and Laila, who's also Afghan. And we're following them and their story as the Soviet Union take hold of Afghanistan, and then the civil wars, and then all the tribal wars happen, and then the intervention of the Taliban, and then the post-Taliban era until 9/11 happens. And we see the struggles of womanhood, of motherhood. We learn that hope and faith can literally save you from so many things and can be the only thing that keep you holding on. This book is the most important book that I've read this entire year, and I was shocked, and honestly, I am still recuperating from it. I literally cannot pick up something else, like a little dance. I cannot because of this book. Please read it. It's so fucking important. It is written by Khalid Hosseini, who is an Afghan-American author. And yeah, it's the most important book that I've read this year. It is immaculate. Like, as traumatic as the things were happening, the writing was still so freaking beautiful. I was like, oh god, no, I'm fucking crying. But then, like, oh my god, what the fuck, who writes like this? It was beautiful. I honestly think this is one of the books that everyone should read. Yeah. Next up, we have Animal Farm. Animal Farm, if you haven't heard, is by George Orwell, and it is notorious, and oh my god, does it deserve its notoriousness. It follows a group of oppressed and overworked animals who decide to take over the farm that is owned by a brutal owner that is called Mr. Jones. They start off setting out to create a paradise of progress, of equality, of justice. And everything goes to shamble because that is the way of the world. Crazy to me how Orwell's work is relevant to this day. And this is definitely one book that you will not regret reading. It did make me cry. Am I stupid for crying? But if you know, you know. If Boxer, if you know, the horrors, I cried so much. I literally stopped reading. It's done in such a brilliant way. This is a genius way to talk about what's happening, issues, socialism, in a sly sort of way. And yeah, I loved it, and definitely a book that everyone should read. Up we have The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Hear me out. Now, why should you read this? Why should everyone read this? Because it is important. It's all about this exclusive Halloween, this exclusive Hollywood icon that is sort of the equivalent of Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Monroe, like the POC Marilyn Monroe. It's all you want in an inclusive book. That's what I like about it. Fucking inclusivity is what I like about it. The goddamn hardship of being unique, special, you might say. I don't want to spoil shit. Follows Monique, who is a journalist that gets this lifetime chance to interview Evelyn Hugo, and we get to know her entire story from when she was a little girl to now. Stigma around Hollywood, around the acting business, around living in certain times in certain areas. And if you read it, then you will understand why this is such an important book and why I would literally recommend it to anyone and everyone. In celebration of womanhood and human rights in general, read it. Lastly, and left the best for last, this is a controversial choice. However, Capital by Marx. Hear me out, okay? I didn't even expect that there will be a day where I'll sit and recommend this book to someone. But here I am. Here we are, I should say, all 800 of us. Why you should read this book? It is a synopsis. Yes, 1,000+ pages is a synopsis, okay? Saw a lot of reviews when I was researching this book about people saying that they don't agree with shit it had to say, but they thought it was important and important for them to read, and after reading it they do not agree to it, or people agreeing to some of it but still thinking it's important to read. And I did make a vlog of it, and I'm gonna link it here if you're interested. I ended up giving it 5 out of 5 stars. Now, did I agree to everything the book had to say? No. Did I agree to Marx's views on the world, on religion, on this, on that? No. Did I agree on a lot of shit that he had to say? No. But at the end of the day, it said so many things that are relevant, more than fucking relevant today and in the world we are seeing today. It explains so many things that a lot of us, all of us, should understand easily, and it explains them in an easy, detailed but easy way that is easy to understand. And I think it's important for people to read it at least one. I mean, of course you're gonna read this once. Who's gonna fucking reread this? But I think it's important for people to read it because we misunderstand a lot of things or ignore a lot of things that need understanding, and this explains them. It explains the values behind commodities and how they get this value and if it's worth it or not. It explains the socialism. It explains the politics behind commodities, the politics behind the value of commodities, the politics behind everything actually. And I'm not interested one tiny bit in politics, obviously. Look at me. But I loved it. And I honestly think it's an important book. These have been some of the books that I think a lot of people should read, and why. And I know I don't speak well, so I hope I explained enough. Interested to know what's on your must-read list. I'm always interested in this because there's so many. Like, there's like a must-read for fantasy and all times must-read where you find like the generic ones, and there's just so many, and I'm always interested in finding them. So yeah, hit me up. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye.